Hey guys, we are down on the allotment and today it is time for long-stemmed pansy experiment, take 2. For those that don't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa prefecture, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, if you have been following along with the channel, you will know that I like to do an experiment in the garden each year, and this year my experiment was pansies. Pansies, purple pansies specifically, were my grandmother's favourite flower, and I recently found out that you can actually grow them with really long stems, making them good for a cutting garden. I thought, I went in on that, I'm gonna try it. So I went out, I got some pansy seed, I threw them in the ground, and it wasn't terrible. My pansy did germinate, just not at the rate that I wanted to, which meant that the plants were not as close together as I wanted them to be. They came, at first they were really short, but I kept cutting them and kept cutting them, and they did get longer and longer, but nowhere near what I could use in a bouquet or a mixed arrangement. I was using them in small bud vases, and I loved them. They have a great vase life, they lasted so long, and I just think they're really gorgeous little flowers, but it's not what I wanted, so I have to try again. But this time, with help. Yeah, I realised that maybe I should learn how to grow pansies with long stems. So I got a book about growing pansies with long stems. Not being paid to talk about this book in any way. I just needed it to help me learn. And I read it and it gave me some really good advice, and then I pretty much ignored it all. Yeah. Okay, I didn't ignore it all. That's a bit of an exaggeration. There are some things that I learned that I have put into practice. Number one, the type of pansy you are growing matters. So last year I just went out and bought whatever pansies I liked. I'm like, yeah, they're pretty, I'm gonna get them. But as in most flowers, you get some that are gonna grow short and you get some that are gonna grow long. And this book specifically goes into which ones are good for growing on long stems. And unbelievably, I have such a hard time finding seeds in Japan. I managed to find pretty much every variety in here that I wanted. This never ever happens, but I did. I got lots of them. Let's go through what I'm growing. Again, if you have been following along, you will know from my dahlia that I like dark flowers. So my first problem was that there are so many dark pansies and properly black pansies. Look at all of these. There's masses of them. How could I choose? They also all look quite similar. So, I mean, do you have to choose? There's just page after page of black pansies. How do you choose? You choose the ones you can get. That's the answer. But I ended up going for this, which is the Pansy Black Prince. Also, so it wasn't just all black, I also got this, which is actually a viola, not a pansy, and this is, in Japanese they're calling it an F1 Panda Momoka. Momoka panda? I mean, panda makes sense, it's black and white. So I have a black prince, and I wanted to honour my grandmother, so I got this, which is a pansy F1 Natural Elegance Alice, is what that's saying. And I got this, which is a mix of the really gorgeous liony looking ones as well as the kind of frillier purple ones at the back. And this is a, what are you? A pansy Shirley Giant. Shari Giant. As well as that, I kind of went for some of the nice mixed colours which were recommended in here for getting the really long stems that you're seeing on these ones. So these are kind of a mix of yellows and purples and reds, and they're absolutely beautiful. So this one is a viola brushstroke. It says viola brushstroke, and it's beautiful. It's got so many different colours on each petal. And this one, which is a pansy, and this is the F1 Nature Bronze shade. I do like a bronze. So book says all of these should give me nice long stems. There were some really interesting points in here about how pansies were originally always on long stems, and then they kind of got bred to be more of the kind of low-lying shrubby plants that we know them now to fill up borders and things. But their natural way of growing is to be long stemmed. which is great. Let them go wild. And there were a few other things I didn't know. The first being that they are really, really hungry and they really deplete your soil. So it's important to start out with good soil to give these guys enough food to get them the strength to grow big and strong. So that was the first thing I did. This is where I am going to be planting my pansies. This bit is kind of cleared out amongst the rows of weeds. Now, 2 weeks ago, I came down, I weeded this out, and I put a lot of compost down on it, rotted cow manure to be specific. I dug it into the soil and I have let it sit for 2 weeks so that it really kind of works its way down into the soil. We've also had a lot of rain in that time, so hopefully it has pulled that down into the soil. I then came back a week later and added a lot of bone meal to the soil. Again, just to give all of the nutrients that these pansies are going to need to get going. So, turned my soil, aerated my soil because it was quite compacted, put down manure, let it sit, put down bone meal, let it sit, and now I'm going to be planting into this. Now, this was where my anemone were growing last year, and I am not growing an anemone this year. I decided I didn't particularly like them anymore, but I didn't pull them out, and they're growing back by themselves. So, yeah, it's not a bad thing. I'm just going to let them be where they are and plant the pansies kind of around them. But this area at the front is all going to be pansy and viola. Pansy and viola. So when I tried to do these last time, I did them in spring. I came down really early spring because we don't get a hard frost here particularly, and I direct seeded in rows, and I had a really, really bad germination rate. Some of them came, most of them didn't. So the second thing I have done differently is to start these guys at home. I started these at the end of August, beginning September, I want to say. And this is how we are doing. Some of them are definitely bigger than others, but they are looking pretty good and are now big enough for me to be putting in the ground. I have grown these in rows this way. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. I have 12 of each variety except for one where I did 6 and 6. And I have planted more than one seed in each cell. So you can see these are kind of like little groups together, and that's how I am going to put them in. Because the second thing the book said is that these guys quite like competition and they like to be planted close together. That is going to encourage them to go up instead of going out. So when I put these in the ground, I'm going to be putting them in at 5 centimetre distances from each other. So at the start of the video I said that I read that book and then ignored pretty much everything in it. And as you can see, I didn't. I have bought the right varieties, I have amended my soil. Now, I'm planning on growing these here in this spot, which is in the ground. In the book, it does recommend that you grow them in raised beds simply because they use so much of the nutrient in the soil that it's easier to just replace all of the soil in a raised bed for the next year so that you can keep growing them in the same place. If you're going to grow them in the same place, like me, you do have to amend the soil constantly to make sure that they have enough nutrient to grow. But that's just something that I'll deal with. I'm going to have to feed these. I'm going to have to feed the soil. That's all right. Where I am not listening to the book is in timing. She says that we should be starting these kind of early spring and then planting them out in the spring or in the summer, and I know that that is just not going to work for my climate here. We have incredibly mild winters, but the spring is short and it gets hot fast, and these guys don't like the heat very much. So I think that for my garden, this is the best time for me to be getting them out. Also, on these seed varieties, which I did buy in Japan, it does say that I should be planting them out now, and they should flower for me through the winter. So I think the author of the book is based in Portland, I think near kind of Washington area. And I think that her climate is just very different from here. So it's actually recommended on the Japanese seed packets to be planting these out as winter flowers, and they should bloom for me over the winter, which I think is going to be a really stark contrast if I can get them blooming at the same time as my chrysanthemum behind me. But also I have done these, but I will plant again probably the end of December. I have the other half of the seeds that I will put out, and if I plant them in December, I will put them in the garden in kind of January, February, depending on how cold it actually gets, and hopefully that will give me pansy also to go with my spring flowers, my ranunculus, my daffodil, my bluebell, all of that stuff that kind of comes up really early in the spring. So I'm really hoping that these will be very much an off-season flower that comes up when there's not much else going on in the garden. But in this regard, I am ignoring the timing that the book is saying is best for planting out and going with just my knowledge of my local area. I used to be too scared to do that, but I've just had so many things die now that I know that I have to trust my gut and say this is what's best for the area that I am in and the temperature that I am dealing with. So I'm putting them in now and hoping they're going to survive. They still look quite small, but they've got really good roots on them. And again, the book says once they have 4 sets of leaves on, they should be fine. So these are actually quite nice and bushy. And you can see I am planting them really close together. Really, really close together. Okay. The last piece of advice I'm going to take from the book is that snails and slugs love these guys and will eat them alive. So I am going to take some frost cloth, not that they need it for the protection from the elements, but to keep the bugs off. My amaranth is currently being absolutely decimated by Japanese beetle. Not much you can do about a Japanese beetle when you live in Japan. So I am going to cover these up with a frost cloth, and then I am going to weigh it down at the sides with just some gardening sticks to make sure that nothing can get underneath it. So that is all wrapped up, protected from bugs, but I am going to lie these down on them to weigh down the sides just to make sure nothing gets in there. These are actually sticks that I have bought because when these guys get a bit bigger, I'm going to be putting these in each side and running string lines across them just to give the pansies and viola something to grow up, to try and get them on the longest possible stems I can. So if I can give them some support, I'm hoping that they will just keep growing and getting longer and longer. So eventually these will be their growing supports. But for now, they're to stop the slugs and the snails. Okay, that is all done, and hopefully I will have lots of really long-stemmed pansies and viola all through the winter and into the early spring. Hopefully. If you want to follow along and see how these guys do, please remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see what I do with all of my cut flowers, you can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that below this. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!